Hello everybody and welcome to Cosmic Fissure. Today in this video I'm going to show you how to use your Newtonian or Dobsonian telescope. Here in the background I have my Sky Watcher 250px 10-inch Dobsonian. The reason this video covers both Newtonians and Dobsonian telescopes is the telescope tube works on the same principle, the mount is just different. So for operation purposes this video covers both. So before we get started we need to look at some things on the telescope. Now, if your instructions specified correctly, you should have already set up your Dobsonian telescope. You will note that on the sides, and I shall indicate now, there are two control knobs, one here and one here. These are to keep the telescope secured to the mount on a equatorial. If you're using a regular Newtonian telescope, you don't have to worry about this. You just need to make sure that the mount is clamped to the tripod. You'll notice that these two knobs are slightly different. One of them, which I shall remove for you now by turning it anti-clockwise. One of them has some washers as such, and so one in the middle with a bearing on it. This is your control knob, and it should be on the side of the telescope which you'll be standing. I'm a right-handed user, and the eyepiece will be on the right-hand side, so I will mount this on the right hand side of the telescope. Now what this actually does is it temporarily locks the Dobsonian in place. If I move it over I'll show you how it works. So we can loosen it and this will make the Dobsonian altitude changes very smooth. But I can tighten it up. This will effectively make it more difficult to move and keep it more steady. And if I fully lock it, it's very difficult to move. So if ever imaging or you need to keep the telescope still, this is what this knob is for. I'm going to undo it a bit. It does not need to be on this tight. Just make sure I did not damage the threads. So you need to make sure this is on the right side. The second thing we need to look for, if I zoom out and move the camera, and move the telescope, is make sure that the caps are removed. And at the front we have this is the dust cap for the mirror. If we dip the camera, you can see there is the secondary or angled mirror, and at the back is the primary mirror. You can't see at the moment, but mine is scored in the centre. It'd be wise to make sure your telescope is collimated first, but I'm not going to explain that in this video because it will take a lot of time. So make sure that your dust cap is removed when the telescope is going to be used. Second thing, you may have dust caps on your finescope. You want to remove these as well. Put them in a safe place so you don't get them lost. The dust cap for the actual tube is so big I usually keep it all in there. And finally, you should have one on the eyepiece, and just remove this as well. Now make sure that you're only removing them when you're going to use a telescope to prevent it from gaining dust. So we're going to prepare our telescope for first use. Your telescope may be different, but most telescopes come with an eyepiece tray. This will be found on the tripod if you're using a regular Newtonian, and some Dobsonians have it here. For example, here's my 20mm 9mm, so 25mm, 9mm, and there is a 5mm and 2x Barlow lens. So we will take our eyepiece out. Note it comes with dust caps. We also need to take these off before we use them. Okay, put those in a safe place. And we'll zoom back out. Now we want to fix the eyepiece into the eyepiece tube. So we undo the screws and place it in as so. We gently tighten the screws but not over tight, so they should just be pinched tight to hold it in place. Now we're nearly ready to start using the telescope properly. Now to align the finescope, which is what we're going to do now, if the moon is out, which it is at the moment, but unfortunately it's now obscured by the clouds, so we can't use that. We need to pick a target that's roughly about 1 mile away. If the moon's up, that'll do fine, and also Jupiter. It needs to be something you can identify so that you can line up the finescope. So for now we're just going to pretend that the moon is there. Unfortunately the clouds are partly obscuring it. So what we need to do is the following. So now I want to align the finescope. We first need to look through this end and find the moon roughly. And it helps to keep both eyes open. If you find the moon with your left eye, if you're using on the left hand side where the eyepiece is, and keep your right eye open looking at the crosshair, you can look for where the moon is and use your double vision to line up the crosshair on the moon. So I can't see at the moment, let's pretend it's up there. Have a look, and there we go. See the moon, and be wise to use this locking knot on the side to keep the telescope firmly in place so it doesn't move. Then what we do is we take a look through the eyepiece in the telescope. Now, if the finder scope is aligned properly, the moon should already be in this field of view. But for the example that it is unaligned, I will teach you how to set it up. So, we're looking at the moon through the finder scope, we can't see it in the eyepiece. Now, first things first, try adjusting the focus dials on the eyepiece holder. If it doesn't resolve the moon, then we need to pan around for a bit. So look through the eyepiece and look around so the moon comes into your field of view. If the eyepiece focusing rack is unfocused, then it will probably come through as a white circular blur. This is fine. So we find it in the eyepiece. So say there is the moon. Then we go back to the finder scope. Now the moon should be in the field of view of the finder scope, but not centred between the crosshairs. So what we need to do is align the crosshairs on there. On the top of your finder scope you should have two screws. These adjust the finder scope left and right and up and down. So what you want to do is keep the telescope in place and play with these screws until the crosshair is aligned on the moon. Then look back into the eyepiece to see if it's still central. And then your finder scope is aligned with your telescope. Now we're on the other side of the telescope. I'll show you how to focus in on objects. It's preferable to wait about 20 to 30 minutes for the telescope to cool down if it's a Newtonian or Dobsonian design. This is because of the warm air currents already in the tube from being inside will distort the image. So 20 to 30 minutes of cool down should be enough time for a stable image. So say the telescope has cooled down and we're currently looking at the moon. We have a dial here at the bottom. It's usually in the same place and it will push the eyepiece in and out. You use this to change the focus of the image. So we look through the eyepiece, see the centered object, and we just dial out or dial in until the image gets sharp. The sweet spot is when the image is at full sharpness and is not blurred. So it will become blurry if you dial in or dial out from this point. So you need to find a spot. Now the focus point is different for the different eyepieces you have. For example, this is the 25mm. If I then popped in the 9mm, the image would be blurred, so we need to refocus. Normally you need to dial in, but depending on the design of the telescope, you may need to dial out. So now we've learned how to focus it. That's pretty much it. You just aim the finder scope on top at any object, could be Jupiter, stars or whatever, and look through the eyepiece, focus it in, and then it should be in the field of view. That concludes it for this short tutorial on how to operate a Newtonian or Dobsonian telescope. I hope you found this interesting and informative, and I shall see you in the next video. Thanks for watching.